Hey, Jimbo, are you ready for this deal?
Start your engines.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, friends and neighbors. Time once again for the Cowboys of the Osage podcast with your host, Jimbo Snively and Cody Garnett. Now let's sing a little bit about it. Cowboys of the Osage, riding once again. Always got some time for a friend. And here they are, the Cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum and the Buck and Flamingo Turquoise Shop, both located in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. We also got a new one, Shorty's Cowboy Hattery, #1 place to get you a custom-made hat right out of Shorty's Cowboy Hattery in Oklahoma City. Hey, it's old Cody over here, and as always, I have my main man with me, Mr. Rodeo Historian himself, heck of a songwriter too, Jimbo Snively. Morning, Jimbo. Who the heck are we talking to today?
Morning, Cody. It's a great day in the Osage. A little wet, though, isn't it?
Well, good thing. We were needing.
Oh, yeah, we need it. It's sure green. Cody, we got a real team roping legend here today, cowboy legend. We got Tyler Magnus, 9 times NFR qualifier. He won the NFR average. He's also he's one of the best teachers, technician, horsemanship, teaches roping, one of the best in the country, most respected in the country.
I've watched a few of his clinics on TV and stuff, and, he's one of the only guys I agree with on roping technique, really? on how we actually do it, Right. He tells people how they actually do it, so.
Yeah, I used to watch his roping show on RFD, and I wasn't even a team roper, and I'd sit there and watch it.
Yeah, me too.
But anyway, we're just really pleased that he's took time out of his schedule to visit with us this morning. And Tyler, welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Good morning. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing great. Great.
Not too bad.
That's something, Cody, a lot of people think of Tyler's from Texas, but he was raised up here just the way the crow flies, probably 30 miles or so north of here on the Osage County, Kansas line. So.
Oh, yeah. Where was that, up by Cedarville?
Yeah, we lived between Cedarville and Pawhuska there. They used to call it the Kansas Trap, I guess. And
now I've heard of the Kansas Trap my whole life. Now, was that on Adams Ranch or what?
It was north of there. Yep. It was just a little place. It was kind of a trap. We used to push cattle down out of the canyons there. Drummond's had a ranch there, the old Gothard Ranch, and it was just right north. I guess Oklahoma Land and Cattle would have been what it butted up to at that time. I don't know what they call it now, but Gothard Ranch, Martin Casebolt ran that, and Oklahoma Land and Cattle and Adams, and then Mullendore was to the east.
Right. Now, did your dad work for him, or how'd you come to be there?
Well, my family raised right there, just right on the Kansas-Oklahoma border up there on Rock Creek. The Kansas Trap. My Uncle Leo lived, actually, his fence line was the Kansas Trap. So, I was born there, and my dad, we ran cattle for Fred A. and Chuck Drummond for years. They bought a ranch just across the line, and we took care of it for them and ran cattle for them up through Cedarville, north of Cedarville, all the way up to Otter Creek there, south of Granola.
Wow.
As a kid. And junior high, I guess all the way up through junior high, I worked for them for freshman, sophomore year, and then I kind of got to cutting out a little bit and got to going to some rodeos, one thing and another, and there we are now.
Did any of your family rope? I mean, your dad or uncle?
My dad, they all roped. I mean, my father was pretty non-mechanical. we did everything horseback, which suited me fine. It was an awesome way to grow up. So we stayed horseback most of the day, and he roped in the pasture all day. And he'd rope with us some at night, but he always made sure we always had an arena and always had lights. But when we got done working, I never had a curfew or any time to get home, just a time to get to the pens in the morning, and we could rope all night, and we did most of the time. And we'd go to getting cows and working all day.
I read somewhere that you started out as a guitar player.
No.
And you decided
my guitar lessons were short-lived. It got in the way of a roping. I was supposed to have a guitar lesson one night in Sedan, and they were having a roping at the same time, and I decided to go to the roping. So that was the end of my guitar playing. I probably should have stuck with that.
Hey, Tyler, you think using those horses like you guys did up there, doing all your day working on them, then going and ranching on them, do you think that made them better horses then?
No doubt, without any question. I remember I was probably 16 or 17 years old before I knew a horse could score bad. We rode them all day long, and thinking of the things we used them for then. That country's rough, and as you know, the rocks and those big canyons. And, we came in at night after we'd ridden. We'd take 3 or 4 with us a day, and then come in at night and go to roping. Well, they was happy to stand in the box. And the first time I went to Phoenix, I rode some horses for a guy named Mike Grennan, which was also from Western Kansas. But at that time, he got into the horse show end of it and trained a lot of horses in north of Phoenix, Arizona. And they were sending us horses. And he was kind of known to get the ranklings and stuff that nobody else wanted, or they'd been through everybody. And I was like, wow, I've never seen one have a problem in the box or try to kill you in the box or try to jump out of the box.
I've had
we had that before.
To me, it may just be me. I feel like these rodeo horses that they break and take just straight to the arena, they're not lasting near as long as when we were coming up. Heck, we'd see 25-year-old horses going up and down the road, and they weren't even specially taken care of by any means.
Yes. Yeah. I think horses have changed. Definitely a lot of things have changed, but one of the things too anymore, I think the average age of the horse at the NFR is 16. To take that pressure, the lights, the music, and as fast as everybody goes now, the short setups, they'll look at the steer rope and look at what we used to rope steers there at Pahuska, and now look at the size of the cattle, and not good or bad. It's all changed and progressed the sport, the industry as a whole, no doubt. But yes, it has. They're getting used. They're in the trailer so hard. Think of how many unnatural acts a horse has to do in any timed event to be as fast as it takes to win something. It's pretty amazing if you slow it down and think about it. It's kind of mind-boggling to me. A head horse that has to score and run and turn, pull, and then face, and you're being 3-5, 3-4, 3-8, 4 flat. Like the steer roping horses, all the different angles and changes and that they have to do, to tie a steer in 8, 9, 10. That's with us hanging off of them, probably trying to keep them from doing most of it.
And the same way with the calf horse, we interviewed Arnold Phelps one time, and he said something about the calf horses. You're asking a lot more out of them today than the calf ropings of the calf horses of years back, because you're just pushing them so hard, short setups and knocking the barrier out of the way every time and reaching for the calf, and everything. It was a lot harder on the horses now.
Yes, I believe that. Not only do you have to do so many unnatural acts, we catch them so off guard, with your timing as far as people reaching, jerks of the steer, the different angles, the hits they take, and then throw them in the trailer and go 18, 20 hours. And they do that all summer long, basically now 8 to 11 months a year. So I think that has something to do with the longevity of a horse, no doubt.
Yeah. You just mentioned I'm sorry.
Speed, saddles, pads, knowledge has all gotten better. So, that helps kind of balance it out. I would hope. I'd like to think that anyway.
Do you have your own line of saddles and pads and stuff?
Yeah, we have some saddles that I make. I don't push it real hard, but I have a bit line that's always been real good that we sell, and made by a company called Part Trades. But saddles and pads, yeah, we float a few around. I put on a lot of ropings. throughout the year, 1 to 3 ropings a week. So we use them as prize lines and things to give away at the ropings.
When you were a kid there going to those little rodeos and stuff, were you calf roping too, or were you just strictly team roping?
No, it's really roped a lot of calves and tripped a lot of steers.
Really?
It's Cody, his dad, and I think my dad and Leon Spencer actually started the Osage Steer Roping Club when I was probably in 4th or 5th grade. And I think it's still going now, right?
Yeah, sure are.
Yeah, I think it's the longest continuous steer roping club in the nation.
Yeah.
It would be in my mind. I think I was, you were a little bitty old kid, Cody, but you remember going to Puska, there were those ropings? And
Oh, yeah, I remember. Heck, we did a roping school up there one time up there at Martin Casebolt's house up there by your old place one time when I was a little kid.
Yes. Yep, sure did.
I remember when your dad and Cody, your dad and Pratt.
Rod Pratt.
Yeah, I did one out at Bob Jones's house too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I remember
They
that.
did several of them together there for a while.
Yeah, Bob hauled me around a lot. That's where I tripped my first steer.
Really?
As far as tied on with string and everything, not outside. And I remember asking him, I'd watched him, thousands of them trip. And he's like, well, what do I do? So just like tripping one outside. He said, it's nothing like that. Just back in there and run one and you'll find out. And sure enough, that second jerk I had right on the back of my head out there in front of his horse. And he laughed. He thought that was so funny.
Yeah,
I saw him not too long ago. He lives up here by Lubbock and brought that up. So he's still getting a kick out of that.
One time my dad was riding a horse for the great header, Brett Boatwright, the guy, just such a great header. And Brett came up there to tie a steer down on him. He had never really tied a steer down. And he went out there and broke away like 6 or 7 of them in a row and just drew a big nasty knot off of every one of them. And then my dad said, it's time for you to tie on now, Brett. And he missed 7 in a row right after that because his mind was so blown. And then he ended up making the national finals on that horse that year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's who I went to my first NFR with, was Boater.
Oh, wow. Small world.
Yeah.
Out there.
But at that time, growing up, Pahuska, Cedarville, Sedan, Barnstall, Slim Dawson's Arena, Cucklebird Junction over there at Ponca City. If you roped, everybody, even the Californians, the Camarillos were there, the Reds and Gerald and Leo and H.P. Evans, Spannings. If you wanted to test your game, you could do it right there around Osage County because that's where the rankest, toughest ropers in the world were. And Joel Maker, all the, you're just
Paul Lee
hundreds down there. Paulie, all the foremans.
Yeah.
Justin Patterson.
Justin, yeah. We grew up, and my dad had roping there at the house, just south of Cedarville, and all them guys were at our house once or twice a week. So, team roping was really, really tough. That was the toughest place in the United States. It came from California, but they all kind of settled right there. And if you want to see how good you rope, it didn't take long to figure it out. What
was that like out there at Slim Dawson's?
No, it's great. He was the first indoor arena that I knew of, other than the Loganey had that little arena.
Yeah.
And there was one in Erie, Kansas, and then Hutchinson. We go to Hutchinson in the winter and just freeze to death. But those were the 3 indoor arenas. Then Kingman built one finally, and then Paul Mays built his out there.
How many teams would they have there at Slim's on a good roping?
That Friday night roping that he had before the cavalcade or during the cavalcade, wasn't it, Cody, or was it Ben Johnson's cavalcade, wasn't it?
One of the two. I'm not sure.
He'd have
I'm not as old as you, Tyler.
600 to 800 teams. Yeah, I'm glad you're not.
I'm just giving you hell. I'm sorry.
600 to 800 teams there on a Friday night. I mean, that would be incredible today. That roping there were so many things that happened around there that, to me, looking back on it, were way before their time. Look at the Ben Johnson steer roping. Everybody, all the greats, anybody who was everybody came there. The cavalcade and the big ropings that they had, and the roping at Slim's house, and those would be great events today. And we're talking about 40-some years ago.
They're still going on today, Ben Johnson and the cavalcades.
Yeah.
The cavalcade's bigger than ever. You wouldn't even believe how many people come to that thing now.
That's something to me. The older I get, I look back at things like that, and it's amazing that a group of individuals could keep something together that long in this day and age, with the phones and the texting, and get into all that. But all the different ideas that float around, but for those things to still be going on, that's really historic. That's a really historic part of the world right there. The ranches, when I was a kid growing up, we go day work at Oklahoma Land and Cattle and Gothard's, and they had their own AI place out there. I can remember going and seeing that big old long barn and AI and their own cows. And that's again, 50 years ago. So I wasn't 8, 7, 8, 10 years old now.
Didn't they invent or perfect AI up here at that cotton ranch over?
I wanted to say that, but
yeah, they had their own airport for OSU officials and government officials to fly right in and out of it. I think right there.
They did have that. They did have that. I remember those planes coming in, and I don't know. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And we'd be down there day working. In the spring and the fall, they had a big sale, and you'd work 8, 9, 10 days in a row, 10 days and nights straight.
John Wayne
I
came.
remember that AI facility. Looking back on it, I didn't know at the time. I was a little kid. I didn't know what it was. But looking back on it, and I'd heard that was the first of its kind. Yes.
John Wayne came bought a bull one time off Cottings.
Did he?
Yeah, sure did.
Remember they had a big old red Bramer bull you could ride around, and at lunch, one of them old cowboys would take me down there, and I'd get on him and ride him around the pen. That's what I remember. I just remember being tired.
Everybody, that cavalcade that Tyler was talking about, it's went on, I think, about almost 80 years here in Pawhuska, and they claim it is the world's largest amateur rodeo, and you can't have a professional card of any kind to compete in it. You have to be a true amateur to compete in it to this day, and they get
I didn't know that.
over 1,000 contestants every year. So
yeah, it's something. That's a wild week right there.
it starts on Tuesday, and then they have 2 performances every day through Sunday. So it's a big old rodeo, big concerts and stuff. It's the 3rd week in July. If anybody's listening and ever want to come, 3rd week in July every year. So.
Yeah, the last time I was there was when Paul Lee was having the TFI.
Yeah.
The 40-foot barrier, and I went up there 2 or 3 years in a row, and that was so much fun.
Didn't you film it for your show or something? Have a little
We
highlight
did.
reel from it?
We did twice, I believe. Yep. Got Paul Lee on there, and that was always a good interview. You didn't have to talk much; you just had to listen.
We've been trying to pin Paul Lee down for 3 years now. He's just he's being a recluse over in his house for some reason.
I've heard that. You'll get him.
Oh yeah, we've even offered to go over there, but he said he don't want to brag on himself. But we'll do all the bragging.
But he will. Yes, he does. He does want to.
He's one of the funniest guys I know.
I know it. He's
hilarious.
comical. As a kid, he was. All them guys were, around Cedarville. A guy named Richard Littrell. There was everybody roped. Our old Roland Bohannon ran the sale barn there, which at the time Cedarville was the biggest sale barn in that area, if not anywhere. I mean, remember 11, 12, 13,000 head runs in the spring and the fall. And now I think they said they tore it down.
I always thought of Cedarville as an outlaw town, and it was all because of that sale barn.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this or heard about it or not. We used to have this guy living with us when I was a kid, and he came from the Cedarville, Ark City area. And we were in Cedarville one night, and Roger Stockton?
I do.
Well, it was right there at the horse sale in Cedarville, and the sheriff comes in mad at Roger, and long story short, I guess Roger and his wife might have been messing around. Roger bites the sheriff's ear off right there in the horse sale, and then runs and jumps in the frozen creek behind the sale barn there and hides. Stays on the run for maybe a few years, and they caught him in Florida. They handcuffed him to the floor of the van and hauled his rear back to Cedarville. And he used to live with us, so that's the only reason I know the whole story like that. He's told it to me several times, but. Yeah, I always thought of Cedarville like an outlaw area, and Roger had a big old silver tooth in the front, kind of like a pirate.
Yeah.
And,
Still got it.
Oh, yeah. I keep in contact with Roger every now and then.
Yeah, no matter what part of history or, I guess, unique characters you want to think of, you could find a lot of them from Cedarville to Pawhuska right there, and down that Elgin country, on the west side of the Mullendore Ranch, and it was a little old. There was a lot of things that went on there. It was historic, I guess.
I remember
in every direction. Cedarville had the Labor Day rodeo, and that was a huge 3-day rodeo, big dances, and just crazy things.
I remember when I was a kid, that arena was pretty new, and Slim was showing it to me and my grandpa. And back there, they had a little room back there, and there was a hole in the sheetrock. And Slim said, that's where Jack stuck somebody's head through that hole in the sheetrock. Said somebody from Fairfax come over there looking for a fight, and he found one with Jack.
Didn't have to look far to find the calf in the country.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, John Tall Chief's arena over there.
Yeah.
Golly. We used to go down and rope when I was a kid. Had a ditch running right through the backside of it. If you ran one too far, you had to jump that gully.
He had a big old arena out there.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah,
Big old trees, those shade trees and stuff. It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still there, but the weeds are taller than the fence.
Yeah. But.
Yeah, it's looking back on it, it was if you liked horses and working and cattle, I guess you'd be hard pressed to find an area in the United States that had more going on than there.
Hey, Jimbo, he mentioned John Tall Chief. Let's just remember him for 1 second. Tell us just a little something about John Tall Chief before we move on.
Well, he was he made the finals one year there in early 60s and or sometime in the 60s, and he was a war hero. Him and his brother George both fought in World War II. George was a chief. I can't remember if John was a chief or not ever, but George was, I know. And just a real nice guy.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
Just a great guy.
I always got along good with him. He always had a colorful crew of guys driving him around, I felt like,
Yeah, he was a good guy for sure.
I never saw him drive, but he had drivers, and they were all funny as heck for some reason.
Yeah, right. Well, Tyler, when did you get serious and take your game on the road and try to make the finals?
Well, after I got out of high school, I went to, I won't say I went to college. I was enrolled in college in Parsons, Kansas. And I lived with a guy named Arnie Bird and Jim Vitt, Laverne Townsend. They started hauling us around. Well, but to back up, Bob Jones took me off. He worked for Oppenheimer at the time, remember? And he had all of eastern New Mexico and South Texas. And he would take me with him to go drag calves. I think the first time I actually came to Llano, where I live now, or outside of Llano, I was 13 or 14. And we'd been in eastern New Mexico, and they called the ropings back then scrambled eggs. And so obviously I was a kid, so I could rope with anybody. And he dragged me around, and we actually came to some ropings out here around Llano and San Sab area. And I still see arenas. There's arenas not too far from my house that I recognize now that are all growing up in weeds that we went to back then. Then I went to college, and Jim Vitt and Arnie Bird and Laverne Townsend started taking me to amateur rodeos. I think I was 15 or 16. And that's when I knew for sure that's what I was going to do. I knew I was always going to ride a horse or have something to do with a horse or a cow, and hopefully it's still that way, and hopefully it'll continue. And then out of college, I went J.D. Yates was in that region, so I got to know him some. And Dick, his dad, was a nice guy. Dick let me ride his horses. Arnie gave me a horse. My first pro rodeo, my permit was Hutchinson, Kansas. I met him there, and then we went to straight to Phoenix to the old rodeo they used to have in the old army, and I had a permit. And Arnie had given me a horse to take. All I had was ranch horses, and nothing good enough to ride at those rodeos. And I ended up crippling that horse at Phoenix, and then Dick Yates kind of took me under his wing and let me ride his best horses. Nobody else got to ride them but me. He had a horse called Hank that he'd win the horse of the year now. He was a little faster, and because Dick always rode a big old thoroughbred kind of horse, but he helped me a lot. Him, Arnie, and Jim kept me mounted, and Arnie taught me how to win and where to go and how to get there. And then Dick took it one step further and hauled me to the big rodeos. And how to score. And the bighorns, I'd never seen bighorns. We went to California the first spring there, and oh my gosh, they couldn't even get in the chute. You had to stick one of the steer's horns out the front of the gate so they could clear the chute at Cotton Rosters rodeos. It took me a while to adjust to the bighorns.
Growing up, all those old men said, if you can rope little ones, you can rope big ones, what they told me. They said
that's not true. That's not true.
Sometimes those big horns, they do kind of mess with a guy's head for no reason if they're big enough. But
I can remember standing out there in that hay barn. Well, I do now, but there was an adjustment, I'll tell you that. I sit out there in Dick's hay barn at night beating the back of that dummy steer head for hours and hours before I could figure out how to catch him.
You mentioned California. When I was a kid, if a guy wanted to be a team roper, seriously wanted to be a team roper, you had to go to California, but it wasn't that way when you started?
No, they would just come back here.
Yeah.
Arnold, you mentioned Arnold Phelps a while ago. He was staying with Leon Spencer, and so they would come to the house and rope a lot. And then a guy named, probably the biggest first influence I remember on my heeling was a guy named Joe Glenn. Yeah. He won the world like in 60 something.
Yeah,
anyway.
I remember him. Yeah. Older.
And guy. I don't know why I remember that, but he for the first time heeling was clear in my head, or as clear as it ever gets, by a guy named Joe Glenn.
Yeah. Yeah.
He came to my house. One of our ropings there that Dad had that we were putting on, and him and Arnold, Kenny Call, all those guys hung out there and roped calves and team rope and bulldog, because we had a big bulldog at the house too once a year. Harold Davidson, my dad, put it on, and the Duvals and everybody came. It was a big 3-day. It was something. Looking back on it, like I said when we talked the other day, I hadn't even thought about any of that stuff in 30 years. But looking back on it, that was a big deal.
Y'all put on a 3-day bulldogging down there, or wherever you were?
You bet.
You know, I've heard a lot of crazy stories about those 2 and 3 day bulldoggings, because all those bulldoggers sitting around there. They're all true. They start getting bored later in the day, and they'll start matching. Heck, they might have a barefoot match where they bulldog with no shoes on, and then arm wrestlings will start up, and then fights will start up just for the fun of it, I've heard, you know.
And they weren't mad. That's all true. I watched it growing up. 2 or 3 days and nights.
There used to be like clans of bulldoggers, you know, like your Oklahoma boys and your Texas boys, and you know, and they'd have a couple different ones, and hell, they'd all get in big fights at these bulldoggings and just have a hell of a time.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched. You remember a guy named Stan Williamson?
Sure.
He won the world.
I saw him just the other day.
Yeah. I watched him. I don't know. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, but my dad and Leon always bought 80 to 100 head of fresh Mexican steers for this bulldog, and Harold Davidson. And to throw them, it was raining, muddy. I watched him throw 80 head of steers down in a pen by himself.
Wow.
I sat there on the fence and watched. He wanted to throw them all down. The guy was an animal. It was muddy, and he did him not one at a time. He just got in there with a pen full of, I think there was 30 or 40 in one pen, 30 or 40 in another. He just went to grabbing them and throwing them down.
Wow.
Those were tough men, and they had a good time doing it. There wasn't, I don't know how to explain it. It was just a different time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, they'd hung out, foot race, cook. Of course, there might have been some drinking going on. Just line up down both sides of the arena like a big old human lane and just bulldog. Just get after it. And the team ropings too were huge. The steer ropings, we had steer ropings there, and then we furnished the cattle there for the steer roping at the Huska, and had a little lease pasture off there somewhere. And, you know, back then to casting, there wasn't fiberglass. It was all plaster Paris. You talk about getting sick with plastering steer's horns. They rub them off in them blackjack trees, and before it would open, we'd have to plaster them.
Tyler, that's the only thing I'm good at in life is casting steer's horns. I'm a master caster. That's really that's the only major trait that I've ever picked up in life.
Well, I doubt that, but we got pretty good at it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that old plaster Paris. You had to keep it wet the whole time you were putting it on, and it made a big old mess. But there wasn't.
Yeah, you had to be not too much water, and had to have just the right amount of water, right?
That's right.
Then fall down and get in the dirt. Yeah, it was fun.
And just like he'd said, after it dries, half of them rub it off, and you'd have to go put the dang thing back on. Now they
did
use
it every 30
fiberglass
days.
cast, and it stays on pretty good. I actually came up with the way to make it stay on the best. I've showed several people.
Good. Well, you ought to patent that.
Oh,
Doesn't
heck
have
no.
anything to do with duct tape, does it?
Well, duct tape is part of it. Black tape is part
Yeah.
of it. And
I thought so.
yeah, you got
I've
well,
seen-
for anybody casting their own steers at home, you got to bend the rebar to fit their head. Make sure it's not touching the back of their head, or it'll grow into their heads, what it'll do. And you got to use black tape to tape the rebar on, because for some reason it won't rot the horns. And then the cast, you got to keep in the pickup with the heater rolling, and it's got to be pretty hot. It's got to almost be kind of melting. And then you put it on, and you make sure you get around the tip of that rebar real good. You like twist the cast a couple times, make sure you get it in there good. And that's how I always did it. And then we finished it off with a one round of duct tape to keep it on until it dried.
Yeah, I've seen some of your work. I've seen some of your cattle off down here.
Well, I'm a master caster, Tyler.
I'm glad you're good at something, Cody.
On your events down there, do you own your own cattle, or do you have someone bring them?
No, I keep 120 to 150 around here, and we just put on I enjoy putting on ropings, and always have, and it's kind of a vehicle that drives the rest of the business. And we have 6, 8, 10, 12 ropings, and just within 2 hours of my house here, just kind of move them around every week. And then I've got cattle at the amateur rodeos here during the summer. Just enjoy doing it. Like I said, anything that involves a horse or a cow, I'm in.
Are you having trouble finding cattle now, like everybody else?
Yeah, it's impossible. There's no cattle, and what ones there are cost from $1,200 to $1,500.
Wow.
I heard the Mexicans were costing crazy money right now.
$1,675, the few that crossed last week down there. I saw a video of them. I probably wouldn't have picked 20 of them.
Yeah. Well, the only good thing about it, Tyler, is when your cattle start getting sorry now, I mean, when people gripe, they got to look back and be like, well, hell, there aren't any cattle. We're lucky to have some cattle right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different time, especially down here. Basically now, you all still rope some around there in central Texas and Arizona. That's where the bulk of the team roping is, and people get to rope in such great facilities on the best cattle and compete against the best ropers in the world. When you get outside of this area, I try to tell them all the time, hey, it's not this good everywhere else. It can be a lot worse. But there's going to be a rude awakening for quite a few people as far as the cattle deal.
Yeah. Well,
I've heard a lot of griping and stuff already, and I'm like, this ain't even get started. We're not even in the summer yet.
oh no, they haven't seen bad cattle yet. Honestly, I mean, we both know that.
No, but it's just the way it is. It's not good or bad.
It is what it is. They got to have them, and there aren't any,
That's right.
so they got to rope what they have nowadays. So
That's right.
that's just the way it is. I mean, we always loved producing ropings too. That's how we made our living most of our life. But
I've been
I tell
to
you what,
many of them.
the ropers just got it, almost started making it unfun for us on our end, in the PRCA. So
Yeah, it is. I know what you're saying. I try not to be a pessimist. It's just a different time. Like you said, it's not good or bad. It just is what it is. And we've always gotten through it before, and I assume that we always will. But,
well, are they not breeding
If
any
it'll run
longhorns? What's
from me-
going on?
well, there's big shortage of them. I've been basing my cattle this year are longhorns, but I think the biggest bunch I've bought since last spring, over a year, has been 19. 5 here, 4 there, 7. And I got buyers looking everywhere. But anything runs in the sale like today, Fredericksburg, anything that runs in there, they'll cost 11 to 14, 1500. But the good thing is your old ones, are bringing $180, $185 too.
Yeah,
So-
it used to be they costed an armload, and then there wasn't any salvage on them. They weren't worth anything on the back end was the problem with the cattle business for a long time. But now it looks like the resale and the salvage on your longhorns and Mexican steers is looking a lot better than it ever has, for sure.
Yeah, it's a rare, unprecedented times for sure. I remember I was 5 or 6 years old. My dad to my knowledge, bought the first Mexican steers there had ever been. He bought 7. Wasn't there a guy named Butcher right there
Yeah.
out between Barnstall and Pulaski, right?
Yeah, you go right past his house and turn north where I live. He was my neighbor.
Yep, right.
Knew him well.
And he traded Tori into cattle, right? Stalkers and horn cattle.
Yeah, stalkers.
Anyway,
and he'd get some
Dad,
horn cattle.
Dad went down there and bought, I think, 7. And they had to be 6, 7 years old and didn't weigh 350 pounds and had horns at least 16 inches to 2 feet long on each side. Little spots, switch on their tail, dragging the ground 6 inches behind them. And we had them in some pens right there at the house, and people drove from counties and counties around and made fun. I think he gave $375 for them at the time. And I remember people hearing about him and driving down to look at a Mexican steer and just making fun of him. You gave $375 for that skinny. 2 or 3 of them still had rings in their noses, where they had them staked out down there in Mexico. They'd have rope burns on their legs, where they had them staked out by a leg.
A lot of times they would just stake them out by their, put a rope around their horns and not a deal in their nose or even around their leg. They'd already have rope burns around their horns. That's just from where they were tied up to an old tree somewhere.
Yeah,
I remember taking the rings out of their nose, and old brass or copper rings. And people made fun of him. They'd laugh at him. I can't believe you gave that much money for something that looks like that. And we roped them things for 4 or 5 years.
What would you give to be able to get those kind of cattle again? Holy moly, just some good framey type steers with some good horns.
Yeah. They're good old black tips on their horns, and little sway in their back. Yeah, you don't see many of those anymore.
Me personally, if I was to go back to roping now, I would maybe have to change up my style a little bit because, these flat horn longhorns, I never was able to rope them as good as a set of Mexican horns that had a little bit of shape to it and a little bit more horn to it. So what do you think about that compared to longhorn and shorthorn steers like that? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, no doubt there's a difference. The events are so tough now. I mean, that's the only thing that keeps me doing it is to keep changing. And that's the fun of the game, to see if I can go out there today and be better than I was yesterday. By tweaking little things. And because those are the guys who are winning. Because the things that are going on in the roping world and the horse industry as a whole, I don't care if it's barrel, any equine sport, it's just phenomenal. The talent and the horses, the talent of the horses and the talent of the riders. And it's just baffling to me, as a fan of a horse and enjoying watching any equine discipline, whether it's reining, cow horse, roping, calf roping, tripping. Just like I said earlier, the unnatural acts that a horse has to do, the athleticism, the brain, and the heart a horse has to do to continually do that and be a top 10% horse is, I don't even have words for it. I mean, it's just incredible what people do now.
Well, I mean, the training tools for these horses now are really unbelievable. I grew up and until just this last year, we never had any kind of dummy or anything. The only healing dummy we ever had was like an old burro on the end of a big deal that walked in a big circle. And, the time to make a horse nowadays, especially with these sleds and stuff, holy moly, and just to get someone roping, I feel like it cuts out a huge amount of the learning curve.
Oh, there's no doubt, because you can show them success every time.
Yeah, like our daughters are. You
can pattern one so quick, and our kids, the horses, they never get to experience failure as much as used to be, because you can show them, say, a sled, you can pull it 10 times and show them 10 runs exactly the same. Exactly. Well, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to make a mistake. And then gradually, they have to learn, no doubt, humans and horses have to learn that. But yeah, as you touch back to what you were saying, it cuts down the time and your success is achieved so much quicker.
Well, you just like my daughters, if we were actually running calves to the chute every time they roped, they'd only get a rope, 3 or 4 head before they got to score a few and this and that, and things aren't near as controlled. But now they can run 20 practice calves, just on this little sled, and then a few real practice calves. Or actually, they're having to learn the way I did. They got to rope the steers around the neck. That's what we had at my house. So that's what I have at my
daughter
today. But I just honestly can't believe I grew up, kind of old school, and we never had any of those training tools for our horses or ourselves or anything else. And honestly, I've totally changed my mind on that stuff. And wow, what a tool to have.
Yeah, a lot of the old ways were good. But look, too, Cody, we were all lucky enough to get to have that. We grew up with it.
Yeah.
We had tons of steers, tons of cattle, a lot of horses. And that's what we did all day.
Well, we had to gather and work cattle all day. Even if it was our roping steers, we had to go gather a pasture and sort a couple off to even rope that day, Every single day we gathered something and we sorted something on our rodeo horses, and I don't know. I just felt like they lasted a long time compared to some other rodeo horses that I've seen.
Yeah. Well, we try to mix the new with the old because we're lucky enough to still have a lot of cattle, and that's my ranching, my little 60 acres, kind of like a mini feedlot. But all of ours get rode. We have to sort cattle every day at the bunks, and we're moving in practice cattle. My daughter will go peel off. I'll tell her to go peel off 4 or 5, and we still ride ours outside every day. But we're lucky to get to do that. Thankfully, the roping, the equine industry as a whole, they're not us. They're bankers, lawyers, school teachers, people from every other walk of life, and that's what has boosted the equine industry so much. But they don't have the luxury of having cattle, or so the machines and things are all they know, and that's why they've gotten so much better, so much quicker. They didn't have all the failure that we did.
And something else I've also noticed I don't know, it's probably been coming on a little longer than this, but I'm going to say the last 5 years, all these kids that they've taken out of school to focus on roping and stuff, and they haul to Wickenburg all winter, and then they haul to big ropings all year long, and that's all they're doing, not going to school. I mean, homeschooling and stuff like that. We're starting to see these guys like Chance Kelton's Boy Catch, and you're
Trey, come along, Tyler Trine, Trey Yates, all of them.
There's just so many of them, and these guys are unbelievable. I played pig with a couple of them on the dummy, and they done stuff that I never even seen or thought of before. If they can think of it, I'll be damned if they don't end up being able to do it one of these days. It's just they're doing some impossible stuff, and the times are getting faster consistently. I mean, I would hate to have to be making my living with a team rope right now with the times they're putting up everywhere, especially at rodeos.
Yes, but like I said earlier, they were raised in the best conditions and taught by the best people who had actually done it for a living, and sidestepped a lot of mistakes that they had to go through that our kids don't now.
I'm just seeing all these kids coming up, and they're just all you can say is wow about them. A lot of these headers they're having to take very low percentage shots, but I feel like they have to even have a chance to win anything.
Yeah, and there's always 10 to 20% of them that can pull it off pretty consistently.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough of them to pull it off that you better do it yourself, because if you want to win anything, you got to be fast.
Well, if there's 300 teams entered and they only play 8 or 10 monies, there's going to be 8 or 10 I'm sure catch real fast, yeah.
What was your what did you think about the Vegas experience when you finally made it out there, Tyler?
Oh, it was unbelievable. The electricity in there. And, you can't explain what it's like to be in that arena unless you're in that arena. You can watch it, and on TV, it's nothing like that. Not even close. It's little bitty, bright, loud. It's awesome. Most electric place I've ever witnessed. San Angelo, Texas, the short round is the only other place that's even close. But it's that same kind of format. Small and completely enclosed. The noise in there is incredible.
Did it start during the grand entry, or when did you start feeling it?
Yeah, the grand entry is the most dangerous thing in the whole rodeo.
Yeah.
It was back then, because you got the rough stock riders trying to get everybody bucked off. And I'm sure it's hopefully toned down now, but I think last year didn't somebody get turfed? And
Wade Sundell broke his back a year or two ago, leaving the national anthem or the.
But they're always jackassing around trying to flank each other's horse, and of course they don't have one. So yeah, you always took a grand entry horse. You didn't, most of the time you didn't want to ride your good one in there. But it's a lot has changed since then. But still the same. It's still the best guys in the world doing what they do best as fast as they can. And you get in a place like Las Vegas, and the electricity and the money and the lights, and the World Series team roping's the same. It's just who knows where it goes. Every Monday you can sit here and say, "Gosh, I don't think it's getting bigger," but the next Monday it has.
That year you won it there, 95. I'm looking here. You won a little over 31,000. Well, that's just about what a go around pays out there now.
Yeah, well, the average pays 90,000 now or some crazy thing.
I know.
Yeah, that was before they had equal money. And more probably, I love the rodeo. Still do. I still go to 40, 50 a year around here, plus the other stuff we do. But man, after that year, I didn't go back the next year just because. Well, one thing, I always had trouble staying out there. If I rodeo, I want to go. If they had one, I was entered at it. If there was a 3 for 10 on Tuesday night, I was there because that's what we did. I mean, that's the only way I had to make money or drum up a school or sell a horse or buy a horse. And that's what I like doing. Now the downtime between the rodeos and the way it's structured, that would be hard for me. I have trouble going somewhere and sitting for 2 or 3 days and running 1 or 2 steers. That's just me personally. Now it's a different time, but we would go. There's summers that we went to 150, 160 rodeos. Think of Tom Walker and those guys back then. I think one year Tom said he went to 225 rodeos. That's getting it on. That's been a lot of places in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
That ain't nothing for a guy like Ralphie Williams or someone, though.
Well, no, Ralph.
Ralphie?
I went to quite a few rodeos with Ralph and Terry and Doug Crow and Steve Crow, and they were with that when I first cracked out there. Freshman, sophomore year, I roped with Terry a lot. And Ralph, they worked a lot. He neighbored on ranches next to us. And John Israel and my dad were big buds, and we'd rope there, and Ralph would come to the ropings at the house on that paint horse. As kids, we grew up around there and seen him and T and everybody all week long. Jim Nunley, all that bunch. They were the best guys in the world that hung around right there around Pulaski for a long time.
Ralph loves going to rodeos so much. He was my last traveling partner, Tyler. We went together for a few years, and we had been gone for a month up in the South Dakotas and Montana and all kind of stuff, roping steers. And I was ready to get home, man. I was so sick of the road right around that time. And we were going through Wichita, and Ralph said, "Pull over here at the interstate gas station and let me out." He went to Plainsville, Kansas to a rodeo that night on our way home. Got a ride with somebody.
Yeah. That's what I mean, though. It was different. Those guys that's the way we grew up doing it. If they had one, if there was any possible way to get there, we were there. It didn't matter where you woke up. Remember the 10 steer in Chowchilla, California. Call somebody on Monday morning, "Hey, let's go to Chowchilla this week." We jump truck and head out. And then be back at Pleasanton, Texas that Thursday night or something. It just, it's kind of unreal when I think back on it. But at the time, you don't think of it. You rope for a living, and that's what you did for money. And I always turned it into a school or some way to make money on the way. Or like I said, if I heard of an amateur rodeo in between Casper and Sheridan in the summer, I'd duck off and go to it. Green River, we used to go to Green River. Just an example, we'd leave the slack at Greeley, and before Belle Fourche was a pro rodeo, Mandan, North Dakota, before it was a pro rodeo, it was a $3,000 amateur rodeo. We'd leave the slack at Greeley, and that year, 95 actually, Kermit and Kevin Stewart didn't want to go, so me and Martin Acero, I borrowed Kevin's head horse, and we busted it up to Mandan and ropes, and then met them back at Cody at the slack that next morning. They're like, "No, we don't go. It's too far." And me and Martin we're going. We're going to go. but it was $3,200. You know?
What a legendary guy, Martin Lucero. It just seems
Yeah,
like
awesome.
thinking back on
Great
him,
human
he really helped a lot of young ropers out too, you know, coming up.
Great human being. Him and his dad, Leroy. We
brother
went
ropes
many
good.
miles together. JP ropes, John Paul ropes real good. His boys rope really good. One of them lives with Martin's, going to school in Charleston right now. Yeah. Of course, around Stephenville, you better have your pencil pretty sharp.
I would think so.
Yeah, JP's kids rope real good. But back to what we're saying, that's all the knowledge that Martin has and all the stupid things that we did and went through. Hopefully, those kids don't have to go through as many of those, so it speeds up the process quite a bit.
What do you see, Tyler, the biggest mistake when you see kids, when you're teaching one of these clinics or something? What's the biggest mistake that they make that you have to correct?
Fundamentals. Just the simple things. Score, ride, and rope. Just simplify it. You know, I don't have it. I don't have social media. Can barely text, and that's fine. But nowadays, all the videos they watch and the incredible things that are going on in the arena, they watch what's going on, but they don't see it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's still the same fundamentals. They're just happening really fast. And those kids don't see that when they watch the videos. They don't see the determination and the work and the hours. They don't fall on your head. I mean, you're out there, you got to grit your teeth and want it more than the other guy. It's always going to come down to that in any sport, in any walk of life, to me. Success has always been a pretty simple equation to me. I don't think success is hard.
Tell me this, Tyler.
All you have to do to be successful is do more than the other guy.
These kids, tell me this, these kids are definitely farther advanced at a young age than they ever were. I mean, they're exposed to the videos, to the schools, and like you say, they're homeschooled and all this. But
and of that's the problem.
Are they? That's what I'm getting to. Is the finished product going to be any better than those kids 40, 50 years ago that came up the hard way? And
well, it always will be. To me, it all boils down to, I call them 10%ers. 10% of people are good at everything in life. 10% of the horses are the best in the world. Like I said, I call it 10%. You're always going to have 10% to get it. That they understand that it's going to take more than the other guy. They're going to try harder than the other guy. They're going to work at it more. They're going to be smarter about it. They're going to be smarter about the business. They're always going to be in the top 10%. And that's who runs the world.
You know, Jimbo,
in any walk of life.
And Tyler, we used to, when we were roping for a living, we would rope 3 times a day like most people ate, but we only ate 1 time a day. We ate 1 time a day, but we roped 3 times a day. Yeah. We'd get up in the morning, rope in the afternoon when it got good and hot on the ones that needed it, and then rope in the evening for ourselves.
That's when you go to a pig stand, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
Is that still open?
No. It's finally
there is a food truck down there. It's open every now and then.
Yeah,
right.
You remember what I'm talking about, right? There on the corner.
Oh yeah. Shoot, yeah. I've ate there many times.
Heck, it was a Mexican food restaurant for a while too.
But them pig sandwiches are hard to beat.
Man, I can remember those steer roping there lasting all night, or Slims are open, and somebody go to the pig stand and get us a box of barbecue, something.
Yeah.
And somebody would.
Yeah.
And then try not to get it mauled when they got back.
Yeah.
You mentioned
those are good times.
Oh yeah.
He mentioned he used to go to Hutchinson all the time, and right when that USTRC started, that was one of the epicenters for team roping. You know, when Jeff Smith got into the business.
Oh yeah, Jeff and Greg. That's where they had them. Those are the biggest ropings in the world. Then
they were.
Yeah,
huge.
You're right. Hutchinson. Yes.
You know, Jeff Smith used to be my uncle.
Yeah.
He was married to my aunt one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you as a little kid running around there. Remember how cold it was? My God, it would be so cold in that building, that white board fence around it. Yeah, those were the biggest first U.S. ropings that there were, right? First time I went to Guthrie's Lazy E, we'd shown horses for Ed, and John Miller was running his place, and John Miller actually designed the whole Lazy E.
Yeah, sure did.
And, we'd heard about it, been hearing about it for a year. And they had their first rodeo was in February, opening day, first pro rodeo. And that that was the second year, I guess, I had my card. Anyway, we're fired up. I met JD and Dick. They're like, Leonard and Guthrie. Be at Guthrie. I said, okay. So I'd been to Guthrie and been all over there day working and stuff between there and Ponca City. And I remember I had to had some old junky ass feed pickup, no inline, one horse inline trailer, which probably most people don't know what inline is. But and they're on the Seward Road, that last curve going up the hill. It was gravel. I got stuck. I had to unload my horse and ride over the hill to the arena. True story.
Hey, Tyler.
I'm thinking, what the world? We've been hearing about this big Taj Mahal. And when I rode my horse up over the top of that hill and saw it, I'm like, yeah, that's true, but they need to build a road.
Tyler, you said an inline. When I told you Ralph was my last traveling partner, that's what we rodeoed in, is his truck and camper and an inline. His.
For years. That's all we had when I was in high school.
Probably the same one that was in high school that you saw.
Yeah, probably. Terry Crow and Bug and all them always pulled them old 5-wide Miley full pipes. It was like pulling a rattlesnake. And we might have had an extra horse in there too, but that thing, anything past 55 or 60, you better tend to it on the steering wheel because it was going to be whipping around back there.
You'd be surprised how many horses you can get in one of those trailers. If you turn one of them around backwards, you can always fit an extra one in somehow.
Oh, yeah. You can at least put 6 in every 4 horse. Yeah. And we did. That was those good days. The old trucks, paper lock, you'd have to get out and put clothespins on the gas line and squirt gas in the carburetor and then it backfire. Yeah, it was great.
Hey, who all did you make the national finals with, Tyler, and rope with?
Oh, gosh. Boater was the first one. Brett Boatwright.
Legend.
Charles Pogue.
Legend.
Steve Purcell.
Legend. Hey, Hall of Famer.
Bobby Hurley. He and I roped together there several times.
Hall of Famers, both Hall of Famers.
There's the last Kermit Moss.
Yeah, that Kermit's
Turtle Powell was one of the last ones.
World champion.
Steve Purcell.
Yeah, shoot, I don't know.
Seems like most of them are Hall of Famers or world champions. Or just a straight-out legend.
They had somebody that good just to get me there.
No, you made them look good. You made Hall of Famers out of them.
Yeah, no. I had to have a good partner to get there. But it was fun. I enjoyed every bit of it. Not still in your mind, you think you can do it again, but that's for my kids to do now.
I remember when you were roping with T, you were entering all the steer opens, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that event. My son's been wanting to learn to rope steers because now they have steer roping down here at the amateur associations. They get 30 guys, 35, 28.
They got a club down there, too.
Yep. Yeah. Right over there, Corey Ross.
Ropers.
Yep. They're around Gatesville. That guy started. Cody Lee helps him. Now Corey Ross is big into it. He just lives 40 miles east of me here. But yeah, they got those standalones, and my son Truman's been wanting to rope steers, and I said, you think there's variables in team roping? I said, Guy Allen can go to bed every night saying that ain't ever happened to me before.
Well, you can show him the ropes. I mean, Tyler probably should have made the finals roping steers. That's how good he roped.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. But shoot, growing up, remember, we roped steers like you team rope now. We tripped them 3 or 4 times till we got the back end. James Allen had that place over there by Veneta and had chutes on both ends. And you get them coming and going.
It was always a rare treat for us to tie one down in the practice pen. It was crazy.
Yeah.
My dad, you just never know when he's going to say, well, fix your breakaway solid now. And because we used a string and a ring, that's how we breakaway. That's how I still breakaways to this day.
I remember.
And Duck.
Delbert had some cattle out at my house, and Gip was working for him. Gip had come out and rope, and they're getting ready for the club finals, and he crippled one night and told Delbert, and Delbert said, "Don't tie anymore."
Yeah.
So he just broke away. Oh, boy.
Hey, Tyler, how does you put on a lot of schools and you sell merchandise and you have your ropings? How does anyone see your schedule or get a hold of you to get into
my
school?
Kids, they just call the girls. They look on Facebook. The girls put it on there, and I just have one phone. This one we're talking on. Just call me, and we'll get her set up. I don't travel much anymore. Just Tuesdays and Wednesdays here at the house, and for years and years, I did over 300 days of school a year.
Have you ever roped with George Strait?
Oh yeah,
He won the Open. He won.
Yeah, George roped. He roped good too, and had some good horses. And then Bubba's boy started roping. But yeah, there at Creedville Springs, he's got a big ranch. Cliff Davis still lives on, and Johnny Phillip and I went down and roped several times and go hunting. And George used to come to a roping or two. We just had to keep it real low profile, you know.
Were you in his movie?
Some people say that.
Well, that was always the rumor in the rodeo world.
It'd be a stretch to say I was in it.
Were you the guy in the movie in the bar that he punched, or was that not you?
Yeah, that was me.
Told you, Jimbo.
Well, the only fight scene I saw in the movie was the guy that beat him up outside.
No, there's one in a bar. In a bar, that's where he gets Tyler.
Was that early in the movie?
Funny parts of that, I was supposed to have been the guy outside too, but they didn't tell me, so we were off at the rodeo somewhere, and I missed that part.
Okay. Well, I missed the part where he hit you in the bar. And Cody was right.
That guy was intense, that Baldwin guy. He was nuts.
Yeah.
He'd get down and do about 50 push-ups, and he'd come up red-faced and sweating, and hard action. He told me, he said, if I hit you, it's your fault, and if you hit me, it's mine. I'm like, okay. You know, so it was about 150 degrees in there, but it wouldn't be something I'd want to do for a living, but it was fun at the time, and that money we were at San Antonio at the rodeo, so that was handy to have.
Well, how did your RFD TV show come along?
You know, I was at the wildfire roping in Salado one year that Billy Pipes put on for paid $100,000.
You know what they gave away at that roping, Jimbo? Each roper got a briefcase with $50,000 cash money in it. Cash in hundreds.
Wow.
100,000 it started for years.
Oh, okay. Each guy got, it was a lot of money.
Out of his pocket. Yeah, we were over at the roping, and a guy that I'd met at a school was standing there by the fence, and he had this camera-looking thing, big old box-looking. Tim was his name. And I rode past him down there. He was sitting there by the strip and shoot. Had this big camera pointed out in the arena. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, there's this show, this rural farm delivery. He didn't even call it RFD. I'm like, what? What is that? So he goes to tell me that he bought this airtime and yada yada. And so I'd ride on around and make my next run. I kind of watch him throughout the day. And we visit, kind of speak when I go by and get my rope off steer. You're riding out the back, whatever. So at the end of the day, and I see more people kind of gravitating to him and talking, and he ain't that kind of guy, you know. He's low profile. So about the last time I rode around there, he goes, hey, you got a second to talk? And I said, yeah, sure. And he roped the steer, and I'll park right out here or whatever. So he comes out there, he goes, hey, I bought this show. I bought 3 shows, which means a 30-second spot. He said, but this ain't for me. I'm tired of it. I said, well, what is it? What are you doing? You know, what are you? He goes, well, we're just trying to get this idea. I don't even know. He said, I'm filming maybe team roping. We're going to film some farmer over here doing something. And he's like, you want it? And I said, well, what do you mean? Do I want? What do I get? Or what am I? You know, he said, well, this camera costs $25,000. I'm like, what? A camera? That black-looking thing you got there in your hand? He goes, yeah. And the shows. That was part of it. And then he goes, well, you got to have a show in the can by Wednesday. This was Sunday. I'm like, well, what's a can? So it's got to be the RFD. Well, my sister Leah she had worked for a guy that actually produced the NFR, had all the TV production at the NFR. And Zoe Zoloff lived in Colorado Springs. So I bought it because I won something at the roping. So I gave him all the money that I had and called her and said, hey, we got to have a show to Omaha, Nebraska by Wednesday. And that's how it started.
Wow.
How many people do you see, you know, tens of thousands, not millions of people watch this show. How many people do you see on a regular basis be like, hey, you really helped me with this or that on my roping just because of your show? Or
a lot. It's very humbling because I don't look back much, probably not enough trying to go forward. And still to this day, The older I get, I guess the more I appreciate it, the fun we had doing it, and hopefully that it helped people. But I hear it quite a bit. And I've just recognized that within the last year or so. So it's very humbling, and hopefully that's what it did, was help some people stay out of some wrecks that I was in. That was my goal anyway.
Are any of those episodes still available anywhere? Are they on the internet, or?
I have all of them.
You have all of them?
I have almost 500 shows in a box here. My sister's been touring around. I got a feeling it'll come back someday. And I have them all on DVD too. A lot of what they call them tips, I guess.
You ought to get you a website. They just pay to watch them. They can just get a subscription to go back through the 500 episodes as they want.
Yeah, we've tried all that. I'm not very good at that.
I got you.
It'll come about. It'll come around sometime.
Well, I'm going to say that information is going to be very valuable in the coming years, because...
Yeah, I never have watched them. I've been waiting. I didn't watch the show when it was on. I haven't seen 10 episodes of the whole time. I remember I interviewed Phil Line. I watched that back one day. Ledge, we roped one day, and I watched that back. But I figure someday when I get old, I can sit around and watch that.
You were a national finals average winner heeling, and you made the finals heeling several times. But heck, my later years in rodeoing, you were heading, world-class header for a lot of great guys. What made you switch?
Oh, I rope for money. I just love to rope. It doesn't matter if the trip, rope calves, head, and heel. I love to rope. That's what I do. At the time, I started out heading. And in high school, obviously did both. But when I first started going to rodeos and got my permit, like I said, Dick and Arnie, and I was a header. And because there were no healers, you didn't have Ralph, Terry Crow, Paul Lee, Joel, just a few guys around the hill, but there was lots of headers. We were at Reno at the Slats in 1987. And I called some guys back here and told them to enter me healing because there was just too many headers. There were no healers. That's when I went to healing for real. And I made the finals the next year with Brett. He picked me up and that fall and took me under his wing. And as Boder did, he started shoot. I don't even know how many. I bet if he went to the finals, I don't know how many times he went, 10, 12. I bet 10 of those were with rookies like me. He would show you the ropes and how to get around. And he was a master at entering and getting places. And that's the biggest part of the business. Roping's easy once you get there.
Heck yeah. Well, Jimbo, this has sure been a good one. What else you got for Tyler today?
Tyler, if you was making a Mount Rushmore of healers, who would you put on it? Need 4 names.
Oh, golly. 4?
Yeah.
Leo, Clay, and all for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But the greatest of all time, in my mind, Leo, Clay. You'd have to put Rich there. He won the world 8 times in a row.
Yeah.
We started roping together when we were 14 years old. He lives 10 miles from me now. That'll never be done in any sport in the world, ever.
No.
Even make the finals 8 times. To have enough fortitude to do that and win the world 8 times. So I guess he'd have to be 3. Golly, I could pick 15 guys. It should be the 4th one. But, I think he's been there the longest. You'd have to pick Walt Woodard probably. I mean, the guy he won second at San Angelo last week. He's 70 years old. And I give him that not just for the roping skills, the mentality and the grit and the guts to still be doing it. Think of that. That's unreal.
He's one of the originators.
I'd put him in there just for that reason or not.
Yeah. Walt's one of the originators of roping schools and teaching a technique to somebody.
Oh, first guy. Him and Leo. The first school I went to was at Cuckleberg Junction there in Ponca City. Leo, Reg, and Gerald put it on. And all Leo did was pick my horse and ride him all weekend, and I worked shoots. And finally, Reg kind of took me under his wing and let me ride one of his horses while Leo was riding mine. And they pulled up in a white Cadillac, and the trunk was full of donuts.
Gee.
Leo sat over and ate donuts and made fun of people. And later turned out to be one of my best friends. He'd stay with me in the winter down here. He was hard to take, cynical, but funny. He made me laugh.
You know, I was at Prescott at the rodeo here a few years ago when Leo was still alive. And boy, howdy, he was getting in the box with those guys. And
Master and
you had to feel like you were probably fixing to win this rodeo because he was giving everybody a pep talk and everything that he liked. And I just never seen anything like it. I mean, he had everybody ready to win that he walked in the box with.
Just like that, whether you loved him or hated him, to have the mentality and the guts to do what he did, you got to respect that whether you like him or not. Because his goal was, even when he got up in the old timers before he passed away, was to win the all around in the 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80, and he did it. 80 years old, still tying calves in 10, 11, and tripping steers. So, just a unique individual, and I like anything that's unique or special horses, people. I just like to see what makes them tick.
Dang right. We do too up here. Yep. That's what we like.
Well, there was a lot, as we went back to where we started, that's a unique part of the world, and a lot of unique individuals live there and came from there. That's just history. They wouldn't have books and movies about it unless it was.
I liken to this place, it was almost like Stephenville, Texas, before Stephenville. This was almost one of the original cowboy capitals of the world. I mean, we had
without question,
world champion bull riders, bronc riders, tons of steer ropers and team ropers. I mean, this was just a very concentrated area for a lot of very tough rodeo cowboys.
No, without question. And anybody that wants to argue it, just look back at the history books. Look at the Ben Johnson. Look at the cavalcade. Look at Slim Tropins. Look at who was there.
I think
you don't have to. It's documented. Look at the ranches. Like we were talking about, the AI facility, and the Drummonds are still rolling big. My gosh, Chuck and Fred A were always super good to me when I was a kid. We did a lot of work for them and worked with them, and I'm talking about you're going. We'd meet them at the pens at 3:30 or 4, and it may be 10 or 11 at night, and you're still driving. They went fast. You're still going. Those are unique people that are still going to this day. That's something to me in my mind. That's a unique person that can do that and make it work, and through all the trials and tribulations and ups and downs and everywhere in between. There was a lot of people like that living around there and still do.
Those Drummonds that he talked about, they've been ranching the same piece of ground for over 100 years in the same family, and the kids.
But think of what that takes to keep that in today's time.
Well, it takes the next generation wanting to do it,
Well, that and having the fortitude to get it done. It's an easy life.
No, you got to live it.
It's a lifestyle. It's hard, and the greatest thing at the same time. Looking back, that was the luckiest thing. My dad was the greatest horseman I've ever seen to this day, especially that not many people knew about. The greatest. Looking back on the guys I grew up with, there was 2 old cowboys that hauled me around when I was little bitty, 4, 5, 6, that rode on these Texas cattle trails. An old man named Oliver Darby, Glenn Lewis. When they were boys, they came to South Texas and drove Longhorns back to Abilene and Dodge City. And, I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't no big deal. They were in their 70s then, but looking back on it now, like, that was pretty awesome to get to grow up with those kind of people and learning the things I did, catching wild cattle or just working every day. And they had a good time doing it. They were always laughing and joking. And these guys were old then. I mean, it's hot. They all rolled their own cigarettes. I remember sitting in the pasture, before daylight, waiting on the sun to come up, and you could see the little orange specks of their cigarettes sitting across the canyon.
Yep.
There's stuff like that come to mind that I haven't thought of in a long time.
I talked to a lot of
that
guys
was
like
the awesome way to grow up.
Yeah,
Huh?
I've talked to a lot of old guys like that growing up through the years, and they all tell you how hard it was and how hard the work was and how hot it was or how cold it was. But
Wouldn't change it.
at the end of it, not one of them would change it for anything. They love it.
No, that's the older I get, that's the most cherished part of my life is getting to know that I got to grow up doing that. Other than my kids' lives, that's the most special thing there is to me. The rope and all that don't mean anything. But just getting to know those guys and that old school way of life and how much fun they had doing it. Hell, you could be coming through the gate at 6:00 that evening, everybody's hot and wore out, and they're still pranking each other, or cutting a joke or jacking with these kids like me, or they just love what they did. And we're tough men, tough. Those guys were tough and enjoyed every second of it. Needs to be more of that in the world today, in my opinion.
Well, it seems like you're carrying it on. Those old cowboys, they were always trying to, in a roundabout way, give these younger guys advice, and you're doing the same dang thing, Tyler. So,
well, I'm lucky to get to do it. I'm lucky my kids enjoy doing it. My son, my two daughters, really handy, and they like what they do. That's got to be worth something. I would hope. That's how I live my life, thinking that. You better enjoy what you're doing first, and then second, if you're lucky enough to get to do it, and then third, if you're lucky enough to be successful at it. Well, that's pretty good gig.
Dang right. Well, we appreciate you coming on today, Tyler. And
well, thanks for having me. It was great fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, if you ever get up here, you got to come check out the museum. You wouldn't even believe
no
this
doubt
museum we put in up here. Every time we walk in here, we're like, how the heck did we build this thing?
Well, I definitely will, because oddly enough, I've had it on my mind about the last year. I've told my son and my two daughters that I want to go show them. I'd like to see those old places again, where I was raised, and those old ranches, and see if they're still standing or who's around. So I definitely will. I'd love to see it.
Every year we got the Ben Johnson steel. We added WRCA Ranch Rodeo to it, and Jay Cooker comes and sings, and we have a big trade show along with it called the John Israel Cowboy Trade Show in memory of John.
Oh, that's awesome.
He came to it the first 4 years when he was alive, but this will be the first year he's gone since. So
that's something. Somebody had a John Israel bit on their horse Wednesday night, and I had a roping in Lampasas County rope before the rodeo, and there was a John Israel bit, and I looked over and saw it. I'm like, how'd you get that? He said, my grandpa gave it to me. I said, I know you didn't get it. John was pretty picky about who had them back in those days.
Well, he was still pretty picky. I mean, I had one on order for about 3 years, but I made a big mistake one time and sold one of them after he sold it to me, and he wasn't real happy about that. So
no, he didn't like that. Yeah, my dad had a bunch of them.
And what a great guy.
He was always after me. Yeah, I've got 3 left.
Well, he's definitely sorely missed around here, and he was such a great
I got
guy.
1 spur and 3 bits is what I have left.
Well, we got a whole case to him in here. You come check him out when you come.
I would love to do that. I will do that.
All right, well, try to get up here one of these days. Give us a call.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank y'all for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks,
we appreciate
Tyler.
you, Tyler.
We really appreciate it.
Yep, y'all have a good day.
You too, man. Ooh, Jimbo, that was a good one.
Oh, great one.
What a great guy. What a great roper, man. He just, and he's helped so many people out through the years. Right. And his roping, I'm going to tell everybody right now that Tyler's philosophy and his roping techniques work. Mm-hmm. I've watched his show so many times, and I'm like, holy moly. All these other guys, they don't say anything near like that, where Tyler, he breaks it down to what actually happens. There's a lot of these ropers, they don't teach the way they rope, So I've always had a lot of respect for him for that.
Right. I enjoyed his show. Like I say, I wasn't even roping or team roping at the time, but I enjoyed watching his show. He's a good teacher. He knew how to explain things.
Well, there's people that can do, there's people that can teach. He's just one of the rare few that can do everything, So, such a good roper. And, it's such a good episode. All right. Be sure and come to the museum. Be sure and come to the Buck and Flamingo Turquoise Shop. Get your Mother's Day gifts. And don't forget to check out Shorty's Cowboy Hattery over in Oklahoma City. Get you a custom hat ordered. Hey, we appreciate everybody listening. We'll see y'all the first and third Thursday every month.
Later.